So the second quarter GDP was down about 31% on an annualized basis. Third quarter GDP was up about 33% on an annualized basis. So people say, well, down 31%, up 33%, you're back where you started. No, that's not the math, because you're working off a lower base. In other words, so if you normalize the economy at, say, 100, so call 2019 output, call it 100% of 2019 output. So down 5% in the first quarter, down 31% in the second quarter, so that's 36%. So now you're down to 64. So the 33% is off the 64, not the 100. Right, so 33% of 64 is about 20, 21. So you're back up to 85. It looks like fourth quarter will be up maybe 8%, give or take. Well, 8% of 85, it's another about 7. So you're back up to 92, but you're still not back to 100. We're not going to get to 2019 levels of output until 2023. And we're not going to get to 2019 levels of jobs until 2025. Best case. That's if nothing else goes wrong.
Yeah.
That's how bad it is.
Yeah, exactly. That's not going to happen in a vacuum. Of course, something's going to happen that's going to impact that. So for a guy like me, what exactly does that mean? Are we talking a just massive unemployment for the next 5 years?
Yeah, it's not going to, the way a good metaphor is, you fall into a 50-foot hole, you climb out 30 feet. Well, nice going, it's good climbing, but you're still 20 feet below where you started.
Yeah.
The 1929 stock market crash, for example, the market between 1929 and 1932, the market crashed 89.2%. So call it 90% for a round number. That's what a real stock market crash looks like. But then ask people, okay, down 90%. When did it get back to the 1929 levels? When did it fully recover? The answer is 1954. Wow. It took 25 years to get back to where it was. Now, that doesn't mean you couldn't make money if you bought the low. You could have made money in 1933 and 1934 buying the low. Good luck picking the bottom. Yeah. But it didn't get back to the old highs until 1954. It took 25 years. And a lot of people in 1929 didn't live that long. I mean, don't hold your breath waiting for that. If you're the buy and hold type, it's a long haul. Yeah. So my point is that's what a depression looks like, and that's kind of what we're in today. So, I remember when I grew up in the 50s and 60s. It was a fairly prosperous time in the U.S. economy, and I remember it's kind of and I did not live through the Great Depression, but my parents did, and my grandparents did. So I was raised with a kind of depression mentality, even though it was a prosperous time. And as 9-year-olds, we'd go out with our wagons and we'd go door to door and collect newspapers and tin cans and stuff. We weren't doing it for environmental reasons. Maybe it was good for the environment. We were recycling because you could take the tin and melt it down and build tanks and battleships or whatever. And that didn't change until the late 60s, when the baby boom came of age. And then it was like, hey, rock and roll, party on, credit cards, leverage, et cetera. So it did change, but it took 30 years. And that's the point, that the effects of this will take 30 years to get back to, I wouldn't say normal, but some kind of sustainable path. And the effects will be intergenerational.
Yeah. And we'll hop in here in a second about kind of what are some of your thoughts about what to do about it and how to in every crisis there's opportunities.
Yes.
But one more thing, and it just really, it's sad to see. I mean, you just walk down Encinitas, where I live out here in California. You just walk down the street and you just see the restaurants that are closed up, and you wonder if they're ever coming back. It's a depressing time, figuratively and literally.
Yeah, half of them are not, and that's another thing where I think the White House and Kudlow. I don't want to pick on Larry Kudlow. He's a good guy, but he's got the worst forecasting record of anyone I can think of other than the Fed. But yeah, that was the point. The idea was, okay, the restaurants closed down in March or April, let's say, and then this payroll protection plan came along and had a lot of money behind it, and the formula was they would lend you 2.5 times your payroll. So tell us what your payroll is. Prove it with a form 941 or whatever. We'll give you 2.5 times. The theory was, but you had to pay it back unless you used it for the intended purpose, in which case the loan would be forgiven. So it was designed, so I'm going to keep my people on the payroll and pay them for 2.5 months. But if you think about it, that was really a bridge loan from April to July. But the a priori assumption was that, well, by July, everything will be okay. The worst of the pandemic will be over. We'll be able to reopen the economy. So we'll give you this 2.5 month bridge loan, keep your people on the payroll, and then reopen in July. Two problems with that. They tried the reopening and it failed. They couldn't reopen. The disease started surging again. It came right back again, and they had to go back to lockdowns, which is where we were. And even if that hadn't been the case, 2.5 months, it helps. I'm not against them doing it. They had to do something, but that only gets you 2.5 months. It doesn't get you 2 years or 5 years down the road. And beside that, the other problem with it was that it didn't, like I say, it was a make good. It was a Band-Aid, but it didn't have the stimulative impact that you wanted. And what are you going to do? Do it again? Well, actually, they did. They just did it again last week. But if it didn't fix the problem the first time, it's not going to fix it the second time. You can spend the money and you can help people, but you're not getting the growth. You're not getting the economy back on track.
And what makes me nervous is, especially what you said earlier, that Biden's already alluded to the fact that they're probably going to do another one, and who knows? And
no doubt about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so if you think about that, then I would assume in those packages, all the forbearances for rent forgiveness, mortgage forgiveness, all of those things are going to get pushed down. So basically, you could have a scene in New York City where it's like one of those Chinese ghost cities where there's high rises. Yeah, they're able to pay their mortgage to the bank because the government's giving them the money to do that, but nobody's in them.
Well, we're getting to that point. That's not that much of an overstatement. So kind of just to start with the tenant. So a lot of cities, New York is one of them, but they're not the only one. They've issued orders or statutes or whatever for rent abatement. So you don't have to pay your rent. And furthermore, we're going to have an eviction moratorium. So not only do you not have to pay your rent, but the landlord cannot evict you. Okay, so that's some relief for the tenant. Where does it leave the landlord? I mean, the landlords aren't the bad guys. They have mortgages. So if I'm the landlord and I have a mortgage, if you're not paying me the rent, how can I pay the mortgage? Well, the answer is at some point you can't pay the mortgage.